Butterflies are particularly well known for their beautiful shapes and the splendid colors of their wings. Their beauty has made them familiar to humans. But butterflies are only part of a large family that we are not well acquainted with, the insects. The largest and most successful family of animals on planet Earth. Like all living creatures, they too are born, grow, reproduce and die. Although there are some important differences from all other animals. In the insect world, the form of growth presents surprising variations that culminate in an apparently magical process. Metamorphosis. Their sophisticated life cycle, using some resources when young and others when adult, allows many of them to live 3 lives in one. And nature works the miracle. Their ultimate aim, reproduction, is one of the keys to insects' success. However, this is only the end of a long story. A story that, more than any other, should be told from the very beginning. Insects lay their eggs in very different ways depending on the species and the environment they inhabit. With the greatest of care, some prepare the eggs to adhere them to the plant where they will remain until the moment of hatching. Some will even protect the eggs during this time. With stick insects, however, it is normal for the female to launch the eggs without worrying about where they land. The reason for this apparent lack of care is that frequently the eggs of these species have similar shapes and colors to certain kinds of seeds, and so can pass unnoticed by possible enemies. However, in other cases, the female has in her abdomen a structure prepared for a more selective laying process. In this way, she can deposit the eggs in a place where she finds the best environmental conditions for their development. First, she lays them in the substratum, and then she buries them carefully, leaving them out of the reach of predators. Stick insect eggs come in very different shapes, sizes and colors, but all of them have a hard shell and a protuberance through which the newborn animal will break the egg to reach the outside world. It seems as if one rule among these animals is a certain slowness at all stages of life. Although most insects' eggs hatch quite quickly, these eggs take an extraordinarily long time to mature, sometimes up to 2 years. In some species, the females can lay eggs without being fertilized by the males. In this case, only female young are born. This form of reproduction has the advantage that it allows the family to increase in size very quickly, since no time is lost either looking for a partner or mating. However, it has a downside, which is that the young are born with a poor genetic makeup, and so the species weakens and loses some of its capacity to adapt and evolve. Immediately after birth, these stick insect young climb up the plants that will provide them with food and shelter. As yet, they have no wings or sexual organs, but apart from that, they're a close reflection of how they will be as adults. The young nymphs live their lives free of worries, trusting that they will pass unnoticed in the plants that accommodate them, adapting to their color and shape. Their behavior also varies since they are particularly agile and fast when they move. The reason for such energy is that they imitate a type of ant that is very well respected for its chemical defenses, and they make the most of this close similarity. The small insects have to overcome a curious obstacle in order to develop. Unlike soft-bodied animals, insects have a hard cuticle, which is a kind of external casing that stops them from growing, as if they were enclosed in a tailored suit. They must free themselves from this suit a number of times during their lives in order to continue growing. In these successive molts, a process known as ecdysis, the skin comes loose and is removed, as if it were undressing. While this occurs, the animal takes the chance to inflate itself with air or water, thus making its body grow. All this must be done with a certain urgency, since a new cuticle will soon start to harden around it. The nymphs grow in this way until they reach the last stage of their youth. The shapes of the future wings can be clearly made out. When they reach adulthood, these wings will have developed fully. Caterpillars also grow by means of consecutive molts, but generally they do not enjoy the privilege of camouflage that stick insects do. They are obliged to take advantage of the short time during which the old suit sets them free. It should not be forgotten that during ecdysis, they are completely unprotected from external dangers. This form of growth is not exclusive to these little animals. Insects must grow by molting their suit in stages, abruptly, unlike the growth of the majority of vertebrates. However, the number of times that each of them undergoes the process during their lives varies greatly, as does the time that each molt lasts, although this is always short. What happens after the last of these is also different, depending on each case. Although one way or another, it is always a step towards the marvelous moment of metamorphosis. In the case of the furniture beetle, the eggs produce larvae, which, with their fragile appearance and soft bodies, are highly vulnerable to any danger. And so they remain hidden throughout their larval life, which is always long, and can even be very prolonged in the case of some species. The image of a grasshopper. It perfectly represents gradual metamorphosis, one of the simplest forms of growth among insects. Gradual metamorphosis normally occurs among the least evolved insects, the group the grasshopper belongs to. The newborn arrives, making the others curious. In the case of grasshoppers, the simplicity of the metamorphosis is clear. In the same way that newborns of some species are very different from their parents, in others, there is a strong similarity. The shape and appearance, food systems, and the organs of the young are very similar to those of the adult. A small grasshopper can be recognized immediately. Getting rid of that made-to-measure suit is always an uncomfortable task. During ecdysis, the young grasshopper will develop inside it the organs and systems of the future adult, but maintaining from the very beginning a very similar appearance to its parents. It will reach adulthood when its wings, if it has any, and its sexual organs have developed after the last stage of ecdysis. Underwater too, we find examples of this kind of development through metamorphosis. Some insects spend their adult lives on land, although their larvae are born and grow underwater. The dragonfly is the best example of this development. The morphology of these aquatic larvae is quite similar to the one the adults will have. The insect can pass through between 8 and 18 stages. Mosquitoes, however, also underwater are an example of another kind of development, complex metamorphosis. Furthermore, mosquitoes have a peculiarity that is unique to their metamorphosis. While the pupae of other species stay still during the time when inside the whole organism is being reorganized, mosquito pupae move continuously. Insects are often distinguished by the fact that their morphologies are particularly different in the young and adult stages. The butterfly and its larval stage of caterpillar are probably the greatest illustration of this difference. Upon entering the world, the first thing the caterpillar does is to eat voraciously. This is its only function in life and its only activity, feeding in order to build up a store of energy, which it will pass on to the butterfly when metamorphosis is complete. In fact, butterflies lay their eggs directly onto the plant that will act as food for the caterpillars. And in this way, the caterpillars do not have to waste time traveling to the food source. In terms of food preferences, there are all kinds, from selective gourmets that only feed on one kind of plant, to others who are not at all fussy with their food. During most of their lives as caterpillars, their behavior is gregarious, giving rise to curious situations, such as all of them eating or resting at the same time. The reason for this frenzy of eating is that during its life as a caterpillar, the animal has to grow quickly to accumulate all the energy it needs. This is not easy if we bear in mind its small digestive capacity and tiny size when born. From when a caterpillar is born until the time it reaches its greatest development, its weight is multiplied thousands of times over. In fact, if a human grew at the same rate as a caterpillar, on reaching adulthood, he would weigh between 6 and 9 tons. However, although one might think otherwise, the daily voracity of thousands of caterpillars does not endanger the natural equilibrium. There are indeed many species known to be plants' most deadly enemies, but on many occasions nature wields its defensive weapons to maintain the biological order. Species that live on dead vegetable materials, such as these beetle larvae, are irreplaceable in the recycling process. They chop up their food with the help of their powerful mouthparts, and they can digest it thanks to the presence of specialized microorganisms in their digestive tracts. These beetle larvae resemble butterfly larvae in their great mobility and insatiable appetites, although unlike them, they feed on decomposing vegetable material. Underwater again with the dragonfly nymph, distinguished among waterborne creatures by the perfection with which their bodies are modeled for the hunt. Always ready, on the lookout for fish, tadpoles, and insects that it hunts down with feline movements. It traps its prey by launching its lower lip like a harpoon, and it holds the prey down with this weapon while devouring it. This is a very accurate tool that allows the animal to get the food it needs to reach adulthood. Under the water, the feeding systems of the young insects are the same as on land. Whether vegetarian or carnivore, the evolution of both aquatic and terrestrial insects is aimed at making the most of the medium they inhabit. After successive molts and reaching the end of the period when they store energy, the insects leave the young phase of their lives and the moment of their transformation into adults approaches. The process begins with the search for the right place to pupate, the home where they will live their second life. This is the task that occupies the caterpillars we usually see at the beginning of the summer. They move quickly, engaged in this hectic search. Some of them choose a place on the ground, spinning cocoons at ground level, where they will become pupae. Others bury themselves in order to undergo that magical transformation into a chrysalis. The adult insect's physical elements start forming within the cocoon. The proboscis of this future butterfly can already be seen in this immobile chrysalis, and it is not for nothing that it is the world's largest known example. Other caterpillars, on the other hand, like to have their home hanging. They attach their bodies to the branches of the plant where they have spent their lives. For this, they spin a silk cushion and hook themselves to it by the rear, while they attach their foreparts to it by means of a clamp, a strong thread, also made of silk, which they have spun. Once settled in its new home, it starts to shed its old caterpillar skin, its last molt, from which the incipient chrysalis emerges, uncovered. However, the moment of chrysalidation is complex and vitally important, since if the pupa fell to the ground or was left in a bad position, the resulting malformation would be irreversible. That is why, when removing their old skin, they must be extremely careful not to come loose from the plant supporting them. So the pupa is fixed to the plant, awaiting the formation of the organs of the adult that will emerge during the summer. In the case of the swallowtail butterfly, the adult will not emerge until the following spring. That is why its green color will gradually change to brown, in order to provide camouflage when the plants where they live dry up with the arrival of autumn. During this phase of metamorphosis, the chrysalis stays absolutely static, not feeding in any way. While its skin hardens and changes color, a true reorganization of its whole being will take place inside. At the end of the process, this will result in the birth of the butterfly. When the moment arrives, the beetle larva also produces a cocoon, a kind of case to which earth sticks, thus providing camouflage against the surroundings. Within its nymphal chamber, this pupa, which stays completely immobile, starts to experience magical transformations. All the beetle's organs grow and strengthen inside. Little by little, it is possible to make out the forms of the future beetle. Its wings, its head, its abdomen. Slowly and gradually, nature performs the miracle. Finally, the chrysalis starts to open up, its skin tearing with the same silent delicacy that has prevailed throughout the process. Metamorphosis works a wonder. The caterpillar, just a worm to some eyes, becomes one of the animals most admired for its beauty, the butterfly. And the process of metamorphosis ends when the butterfly starts to pump blood towards its wings, making them spread. Caterpillar bodies and butterfly wings, two worlds that are totally different yet which share the same central character. The life cycle in constant renewal. When that moment is over and the wings that are to be so useful during the butterfly's life take on their final shape and hardness, the insect will be ready to fly. Its destination is sexual intercourse, which will restart the beautiful process that best represents the life cycle. Complex metamorphosis is the greatest specialization achieved in the insect world, and it is present in the most evolved species. It is an incredible magic show that nature puts on every day, an incalculable number of times, and in very different ways. The birth of a butterfly is a marvelous thing, but the metamorphosis that occurs in other insects is no less wonderful. The adult beetle starts out on life without wasting time, as if the long wait inside the pupa had made it impatient, and it was in a hurry to get started on this last essential part of its life. The wonder that is complex metamorphosis, and the spectacular contrast between the unpleasant appearance of the larva and the beautiful colors of the adult insect. It is equally curious that animals which, when young, feed on dead material, as adults drink the nectar of flowers. The dragonfly has ended its youthful development and is preparing to fly, taking on a new appearance and coloration. It could be said that it is a different animal, now surprisingly adapted to life in the air, where it will become a great predator with the same success it had in its previous stage underwater. The mosquito has also just emerged and is ready to begin its new life. Once the pupa has been abandoned, it settles on the surface of the water, waiting patiently for its new suit to dry, while it prepares to make summer nights a misery for human beings. Feeding in order to live is perhaps the oldest fact in the Earth's history, a need that is common to all living creatures, and which insects also share in their adult life. However, how many more surprises await us as we look even closer at the fascinating world of how insects feed? Among adults, there are innumerable species that choose an exclusively vegetarian diet, which does not prevent them from having different and very often select feeding habits. In one way or another, and depending on the case, the leaves, trunks, roots, flowers, seeds, and fruit of all kinds of plants can form part of this immense larder that nature has made available for insects. And if the food is diverse, then the forms of eating are even more so. Each of the hundreds of thousands of different species of insect has its own way of searching for food. Sipping the nectar from flowers is one of the most common. Some insects do so by introducing their mouthpieces, adapted for sucking into the flower. The friendly relationship that they enjoy seems to be illustrated by the delicacy with which some insects feed on the flowers. They don't know it, but they are enjoying a banquet their host has invited them to in exchange for a favor, without which the plant could not reproduce. By searching for food, insects play a crucial role in the pollination of flowers, and that is why they are necessary for reproduction. Although there are also curious cases of opportunism, such as this bumblebee. It is not that this insect refuses to pollinate the plant. In fact, it sometimes does so, but its impatience can lead it to eat from the base of the flower, and so it obtains the nectar without transporting the pollen in exchange. However, the bumblebee's case is an exception. The most common case is for insects and plants to need each other. In fact, there are cases of plants which, when moved away from their natural habitat, die without being able to reproduce due to the lack of the insects that pollinated them in their natural environment. Of course, today, technology is able to solve that problem, but even so, nature continues to prefer her own methods. The spectacular colors normally shown by flowers have a function that is more than simply to look good. Actually, these colors attract the pollinating insect by providing a seductive destination. The shapes of flowers are often in designs that allow the insects to land on them without problems. This is another of nature's techniques to facilitate pollination. In accordance with their elegant appearance and delicate manners, butterflies have transformed their mouthpieces into their proboscis, a kind of long trunk that is rolled up when the animal is not eating and which is unrolled when the creature wants to reach the nectar. Other insects have gone as far as lengthening their own heads so that they have a beak strong enough to go through the shell of the chosen nut in order to reach the food inside. Some carnivores have developed a stiletto. The system is basically the same, only the type of food varies. With it, they puncture the victim alive and suck it until it is completely empty. Certainly, carnivorous insects are very specialized animals. All their organs and systems are prepared to feed on living creatures. The mantis's mandibles carry out a very precise task. This image illustrates better than any other the synchronization developed by organs located in insects' heads. The large size of its eyes enables it to locate its prey. The precision of its movements to stalk them and capture them. Its legs, which are sharp and have spines, to hold them, and its implacable jaws filled with teeth to cut them up and devour them. Without doubt, the sensory organs developed by predators are much more complex than those of vegetarians and their conduct much more elaborate. Mantis and dragonfly, two specimens that reveal nature's ability to create insects that are conceived exclusively for hunting. Beneath the water, the food of aquatic insects is basically similar to that of land insects, the only difference being those marked by the environment to which the former have learned to adapt. This animal, the largest aquatic beetle in Europe, feeds off algae and aquatic plants. When it is time to feed, the water scorpion captures and holds the invertebrates off which it feeds in its forelegs, using the system of stinging and sucking the victim. When food is scarce, as occurs when the pools dry up in summer, it may even practice cannibalism. This is the case of the backswimmers, called so due to the way in which they move using their long back legs as oars to swim just below the surface of the water. When an insect falls into the water, its light weight causes vibrations that are captured by the predator, which immediately pounces on its prey. Its hunger is satiated. The story is repeated over and over again, but there are times when this is not so easy. Some victims fight for their survival. In that case, a fight to the death takes place in which the hunter is always at an advantage. If its prey puts up a fight, the predator just waits for it to drown. An inhabitant of the river backwaters which it occupies in large colonies, the water strider have become accustomed to living on the water, thanks to the surface tension and the fact that the insect's weight has diminished and its legs, which have a cushion of fat, have been considerably lengthened. This way they can cover a large radius and float on the thin surface area. They feed off insects that accidentally fall into the water. The vibrations allow them to locate their prey. They sting the victim and suck out the liquid while using their forelegs to grasp it. The water measurer is a relative of the water strider. Floats on the water using the same technique as the water strider, but prefers the vegetation that floats on the surface. Apparently, apart from the secret of knowing how to float on the water, both insects are familiar with peacefully coexisting in the habitat in which they live. Contrasts in nature. Contrast between the carnivorous voracity of the predator and the peacefulness of a vegetarian meal. These beetles feed off dead matter and excrements, thereby contributing to the constant regeneration and enriching of soil nutrients. The ground over which they pass is cleaned and the vegetation can grow back. They are actually true recycling machines and essential in the vital process created by nature. The existence of these beings with their unattractive eating habits is extremely fortunate for the biological order. To feed, all insects, both vegetarian and carnivorous, need the help of their feelers, legs, and their eyes. They are without a doubt aware of the importance of all these organs in detecting and recognizing which plants or animals are appropriate for satiating their appetite without any risk. For that reason, they all maintain scrupulous levels of hygiene. All insects have adapted their bodies in such an amazing and spectacular way to ensure the survival of their species. And each one of these adaptations has an ultimate objective that is common to all: reproduction. Finding a mate, a common act in all species, and one which, although appearing simple, conceals many different ways of seduction and physical peculiarities. An enormously diverse series of techniques that comprises what is without a doubt the most interesting type of sexuality on the whole planet. Flirtation between the males and females, a rite that is as ancient as the earth itself, which only the hermaphrodite species can afford to do without. However, since this is a very rare case in insects, they must make great efforts to find a mate. Nature knows the importance of the encounter between the sexes and has developed a wide range of weapons of seduction in order to make it easier, and, when necessary, to shorten it, since many insects exist that live for only a few hours during their adult life. In the spring, the time when the environmental conditions are ideal, the exercise of seduction is increased. Of course, this flashy display has only one ultimate objective: copulation. In this case, the male and female look similar, but this is not always the case. In the universe of beetles, the rules of seduction before mating are as diverse as they are surprising, in many cases. The female sometimes gives off a penetrating odor that may attract thousands of males at one time. The physical differences between males and females from the same species are important in many stages of sexual behavior among beetles and are not governed by any particular rule, but some may affect any part of the morphology of the male or the female. The amorous encounter may bring a few surprises. The female does not have the protuberance that the male sports in the form of a spectacular horn. In fact, they could be considered as different animals, and yet that physical difference plays a very important role. As a general rule, the protuberances and horns on many male beetles are used for the combats that often take place during the mating season. These combats fulfill the objective of improving and perpetuating the continuity of the species. The strongest beetle will mate with the female and transmit its force to its issue. The males of some species may find a mate at a long distance thanks to their inordinately large feelers. They use them to capture the odorous calls emitted by the females during the phase prior to mating. The amorous encounter between grasshoppers is quite surprising. Most male grasshoppers are smaller than the females. This often makes it necessary for them to contort their abdomens to copulate with their female companions. An extremely uncomfortable posture, especially if it is considered that some grasshoppers copulate for several days and can even search for food without interrupting sexual intercourse. There may also be different phases of behavior when copulating in addition to purely physical ones. This grasshopper uses its wings to approach the female. The female is much more passive at the time of making the approach. Perhaps this is because of her tendency to use her tiny wings as little as possible, due to their lack of development, making it impossible for them to be used for flight. The most beautiful animals of all insects, maintaining and even improving their elegance at the time of copulating. Male and female show off their delicate bodies. The male pumps sperm into his female companion for many minutes to fertilize her. The union of two butterflies is a symbolic illustration of the importance of reproduction. It's the last moment in the life of an insect. For at that particular moment, they are risking their lives. During copulation, butterflies are at the mercy of their predators. In the stick insects, the differences are also quite evident. The females of this species are larger and have lost their power to fly, since due to their particular mating rite, this is not necessary. The female emits certain chemical substances that attract the males, which fly over long distances to their female companions. The encounter of the sexes is totally guaranteed. These animals may copulate for hours, and even up to 3 weeks. During that time, the tiny winged male literally hangs from the body of its mate. The sexual behavior of the mantis, a universal legend about which the whole truth is by no means known. The male cautiously approaches the female, which is busy devouring her prey, and suddenly pounces on her. With a gentle movement that is quite uncharacteristic of these implacable predators, he brings his abdomen close to that of the female, with the intention of copulating. But the copulation rite of the mantis immediately takes on the character that has made it so famous. In 1 out of every 5 sexual acts, the male is devoured by the female. She starts by eating the head, thereby eliminating the nervous centers that inhibit copulation, and that way achieving a faster transfer of sperm. In these cases, the male feeds the female, which this time may decide not to eat her companion. The change from a young insect to an adult one is quite different from that of other animals. Many species must overcome a series of obstacles and dangers during their 3 lives in one. The growth processes are so amazing that they constitute a world of unexpected surprises in themselves, and also a lesson about the quiet and age-old struggle of these tiny beings to survive. The adult butterfly is now ready to fly in search of a mate, thereby ending the cycle that will start again with the budding of a new life.